Welcome back to the Middle of Culture. I am one of your hosts, Eden.
And I'm your other host, Peter.
Hey, Peter, how you been? What you been up to? It's late March. The weather where we're at has been pretty nice, pretty warm. How have things been out with y'all?
You know, it was pretty cold and it snowed quite a bit a week or so ago. And then it got nice and warm. And this week it was in the 60s. And then today it's in the 50s and it's supposed to snow again early next week.
Yeah, we've had a couple really warm days. Today was in the mid 70s. Tomorrow's supposed to approach 80. And by Monday, snow again. So no time wasted, dipping right back down. So
yeah, it's interesting. It is definitely, it's felt nice this week. It's felt like spring, but today it definitely felt a little cooler. And like I say, it's supposed to cool off next week, but that's okay. I was off from work this week. I usually take spring break off, and we usually try and travel and do something, but this year didn't work out. Liz is in Mary Poppins at a local playhouse, and it starts on the 2nd of April. So this week is kind of the final week of rehearsals and stuff. And Gareth needed to get his wisdom teeth out. So he got his wisdom teeth out last Thursday. And so I figured, well, it was the perfect time for me to get snipped. So I had my vasectomy on Monday. So it's mostly just been us hanging out at home.
That gives you a lot of opportunities to sit around and watch things or play video games or things like that. So what have you been up to?
Well, so you do recall how I think on a couple of occasions I mentioned that I had started Avowed, but I just wasn't really getting into it, was kind of having a hard time. And that is no more. I have been playing a shit ton of Avowed. I think I've probably logged almost 40 hours.
Oh, wow.
And
you got to be pretty close to the end then, right?
Oh, I am. I'm in Galawain's tusks, and I'm running around. I'm doing every bounty. I'm trying to find the totem stuff and all that before then I go to the next story quest. I probably only have a couple of those left before I'm at the end.
Nice. And obviously you're enjoying it if it's grabbed your attention this much. It's pretty good, huh?
I am. Yeah, it is a great game, and there's a lot of things about it that I really, really appreciate. And I'm not going to talk about them today because I think that they would make a good future topic. So I'm just going to say I've been enjoying the crap out of Avowed. I will say this. It is an Unreal Engine game, and the world looks great. There's really beautiful stuff in the world, but the characters look real bad for the most part.
They're not great.
Real bad. I mean, you go and you talk to someone and they just don't look great. It's interesting. I don't know. I mean, they're part of Microsoft now and stuff, but this feels like a game that was done on, it doesn't feel like a AAA game. In a lot of ways, it feels like a AA game, which is great. I do not say that denigrating the game at all. In fact, I think that one of the best things about digital distribution and ease of access and everything, I think that the resurgence of the AA video game has been a really good thing over the last few years, because we don't need every game to be Call of Duty. It doesn't have to have the absolute highest production values. It didn't have to cost hundreds of millions of dollars to make. And I'm not saying that I think Avowed was cheap. I'm sure they spent quite a bit to make it. And, they're not, if you buy it, you're paying full price like a AAA game. So it's not in that cheaper, $40 or $50 tier like some AA games. But it is on Xbox Game Pass or whatever. So, if you're subscribed to that, you get to play it. And it's been a lot of fun. And like we talked about, Obsidian, they're good writers. And I think this is an interesting, complex story that there's a lot of shades of gray, you know?
Yeah.
You hinted at some of the, and we can talk about aspects of the game if you want, in terms of story beats.
No, by all means, if we want to save it for a future episode once you're done, let's save it for a future episode once you're done. We can have a little spoiler section in the next episode because you'll probably be done by next time.
Oh, I will. I'm hoping to be done by this weekend because then I get back to work on Monday and I'm on call, and it's just one of these things where I'm like, now is the time to bust it out. But
now is the time.
You know, I've been doing that. I've been watching.
I have to just say, the thing. I was reminded of a post from a person I follow who played the game recently, and she screenshotted the thing and said, yes, the Obsidian Classic. And it is a dialogue box where you have two options as the player to either say, you got it, or lie, you got it. And that is just like, that's what this game is. It is like, you're gonna say this person, you're going to encourage this person. Do you mean it or not? And that means something to you as the player. And I don't think it makes any difference in the choice that you make, but it means something to you as the player to have to sit there and be like, do I mean it when I say you got it to this person, or am I lying? And I think that sort of thing is where Obsidian really shines.
Yeah. Well, and there's been a couple of situations where I was trying to approach something peacefully, and you can do it, but the game's going to make you work for it, you know? And so there was one interaction where I'll just be honest and say I did a lot of save scumming, where I could get to a place and it was like, I don't have enough resolve or perception or something to unlock this one particular dialogue choice. And I can tell this is the dialogue choice I have to pick if I'm going to resolve this without just going total murder hobo on everybody. And so then I would basically go back. And here's one of the great things. And this is a preview of what I want to talk about. But it's awesome that I can then just run into my inventory and I can go down and I can find, hey, what food or drink or something is going to boost those stats for the next 20 minutes or 2 minutes or however long it does it. I don't know. But so kind of playing around with it like that to try and resolve things in a way that I wanted to, that I felt was more true to my character. Because these were situations where my character would not want to. So I'm playing as a wizard basically, and I'm wand in one hand. I have this, legendary wand that has a little fist on the end and it's like dripping flames all the time. And then I've got a legendary grimoire in my other hand, and I'm just like full on casting spells constantly. And, I'd get to these situations and I'm like, I don't think that that's what my character wants to do. I don't think my character wants to just blow these people all away. And so, doing a little bit of tweaking here and there to try and get that the way I want it, because I think they do a decent job of getting you into that character, Yeah, so
absolutely.
Yeah, I'm enjoying it. I have really, like I say, it got its hooks into me, and I'm loving it. Really having a good time. Looking forward to wrapping up so we can talk.
Heck yeah.
But that's really about it. I mean, not a lot of new music that's come out that's stuck with me that's worth bringing up. Been watching a little bit of Mythic Quest Season 4, if there's some night when I'm home alone. It's a fun show. I think the first 2 seasons drew me in a lot more. The last couple, I haven't been as invested in, but that's honestly really about it. What about you? What you been up to?
Let's think. So first off, I did a Peter thing. And that is I bought a piece of tech that was maybe unnecessary, a little extravagant.
Okay.
But I've been having a very good time with it. We got to talk about something
there. So please tell me about yours, and then I will tell you about mine and the regrets that it has brought around.
Well, I have no regrets with mine. And I think that you are going to potentially be the first person who I say this to and you answer in the affirmative, because every other person I've said this to has been like, what the fuck are you talking about? Hey, Peter, do you know what a Boox Palma is?
Hey, Eden, if you were to go back and look at our iMessage chain, there's a picture of a Boox Palma in there that I sent to you quite some time ago. So,
well, there you go.
Yes, I do know what the Boox Palma is. Oh, look at that. Beautiful.
It's Boox Palma, a clock, baby. Literally, it is a clock, because that is the screensaver I have on mine right now. I got this. I have a friend who got hers like a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, and was singing its praises. And we've talked multiple times about how I just want to spend less time doom scrolling. And I find that hard, even on my phone, where I've got all of these, e-reading programs installed. The clarion call of the social media app still will suck me in, regardless of whether I want it to or not.
Sure.
And so I was like, well, the form factor size of this makes me think that this will be a good choice for me. So I just bit the bullet and bought it. I am 5 books deep since I got it a week ago.
Dang, that's awesome.
So like I've been reading like a fiend. It's been great. I really like it because I carry it around with me, either in addition to or sometimes instead of my phone. And then I read a lot more. When I'm waiting for the bus, I pull this out instead of my phone. When I am laying in bed before I fall asleep, or when I wake up, I grab this instead of grabbing my phone. And it has been really, really good. I've read a lot of stuff. I read a trilogy of romance novels about these 3 people who meet up at their 5th year law school reunion and are like, hey, we're all working as juniors in these big old firms and it sucks. Let's start our own firm. And so they all leave their big law firms, they start their own firm, and then each book is basically the romantic entanglement of one of the 3 friends. So the first one falls in love with a competing lawyer at another firm as they're basically trying to steal this client away, but then they start falling in love with each other as they're working on this case together. The second one falls in love with like a wedding blogger while she is trying to defend this like wedding, like bridal gown store owner from like these attacks because his siblings have closed down their bridal stores against his will as part of as a minority owner of this of this company they have. And then the third one, the first one's little sister has to come back from like being a lawyer abroad and is stuck back in Austin, and then falls in love with the other friend who she's had a crush on since they were like kids. And they were fun. It was a real delight. None of them were very heavy. None of them were really big reads. They're all by Carson Tate. I should say their names just to give her due. They were called Practice Makes Perfect, Out of Practice, and Best Practice. And they were all pretty fun. Just light romance novels. And then I read another one called On the Square, which was pretty mid, so I don't need to talk about it other than that. And I also read, what's the other one I read? I'm almost done with the first volume of The Executioner and Her Way of Life, which is also has some really, it is plagued by the problem that every light novel has, with like very few exceptions. I think that the I'm in Love with the Villainess light novels are actually pretty well written, but that is unfortunately the exception and not the norm when it comes to light novels. And I don't know whether that is, I think that it's probably that light novels are kind of shoddily and quickly written. But I also feel like I bet that the translators are not doing a good job of interpreting, and I think that they're doing a lot of straight across translation in a lot of these light novels I'm reading. Because guess what's bad? Straight across translation. Dear listeners, let me tell you, as a person who can read in multiple languages, if you read a translation of something that you've read in that first language, you can tell whether it's a good or a bad translation. And the bad translations Not always. Sometimes the interpretive translations are also bad. But if they try to do a straight translation where they're like, I'm just trying to write exactly what that person wrote, it's going to suck. It's going to suck. Mm-hmm. It sucks every time. And I think that is likely a part of why light novels are bad. But I also think that they have big ideas and then just shit them out onto the page as fast as possible. So I think the executioner and her way of life has some really interesting ideas. But it's pretty stodgily written is what I will say.
Yeah.
Let's see. What else have I been doing? I mean, nothing really. I've been reading a lot, as you can tell.
That's great.
I guess another thing I just want to mention. This is interesting stuff, not necessarily stuff I've read, but this is a culture and pop culture podcast. Have I talked about the Absolute line from DC Comics at all in the podcast?
I don't believe so.
I think I've forgotten to bring it up at all. Are you familiar with the Absolute line at all? Have you seen it in any of your pop culture ruminations?
I see very little comic book stuff, so I have not.
That's fair. Have you heard of the Ultimate line from Marvel?
Yes.
Okay, so let me do some groundwork laying, dear listeners. So about a year and a half ago, Marvel relaunched the Ultimate line with a totally new Ultimate Universe. Because back in the olden days, in the ye olden days of 1999 is when the original Ultimate Universe started, and it was a chance to start anew, telling familiar stories, but from a blank slate. And most of it is very, very bad. The only part that people say, lots of people say it's good, and all those people are wrong because the Ultimate Universe is mostly shit. The one good thing that came from it, and it is middling to good, is Brian Bendis's Ultimate Spider-Man run, where he reinterprets and tells, early Spider-Man stories, and they're pretty good. Like, you could do worse when it comes to reading Spider-Man comics if you want to read Spider-Man comics, but this is just like teen Peter Parker running around, clones are happening, romance is happening, but he eventually gets got. He dies in that comic, and that is where Miles Morales comes from. It's from the Ultimate Universe.
Okay.
And then eventually some shenanigans happen that will be coming to a theater near you in the next couple of years in a book called Secret Wars. And that is why Miles Morales is now in the regular Marvel universe and no longer in the Ultimate Universe. And basically in the Secret Wars comic, the Ultimate Universe ceased to exist. And that's why Miles Morales and his whole supporting cast is in the regular Marvel universe now. But so last year, they relaunched the Marvel Universe. It is now a differently different universe this time. For real grognards, the original Marvel Universe is Universe 616, which the movies also use that, and they're wrong. It's 19,999. It's not 616. That's the comics universe. The original Ultimate Universe was 1610. This is Universe 6160, so it's different, as you can see. But importantly, what happened here is the evil Reed Richards from the original Ultimate Universe started jumping universes during the lead up to and during Secret Wars. So he goes to the 6160 universe and fucks everything up and turns it into his perfect world. And he's evil Reed Richards. So what he does is he makes sure that none of the superheroes are around. And so the first book that relaunched the new Ultimate Universe, like there was Ultimate Incursion, which is like things happen, Thor and Sif show up, things like that happen. But basically a very young Tony Stark is empowered by his father who gets, it doesn't matter. He is around and he says, okay, we need superheroes in this universe. So he goes and he finds a 38-year-old Peter Parker and says, hey, when you were 15, this spider was supposed to bite you, but the maker, evil Reed Richards, stopped that from happening. But 23 years ago, this spider was supposed to bite you and you were supposed to be a superhero. So here's a spider. Make a decision. I don't care what you do. And so 38-year-old father of two, Peter Parker, is like, I don't feel like I've done much with my life, and I feel like this matters. And so he becomes Spider-Man, again, father of two at age 38.
Okay.
And so that is a really different reimagining of Spider-Man. I think a lot of it is coming out of what we sort of saw in Spider-Verse with Peter B. Parker,
sure.
Where he's a little older, he's a little sadder. But this is taking it even a little bit further now. And then there's other stuff that's been happening in the Ultimate Universe. It's mostly very good. The Ultimate X-Men book is basically a horror manga that's just happening to take place in this universe. Cool stuff is happening. And it's been selling very well. It sells very well. They are the best-selling Marvel comics in our shop by a country mile. And clearly that's happening other places because DC was like, we want in on that action. Sure. So they started the Absolute Universe, which is the same sort of idea of like, what if the regular DC universe, but twisted and weird in weird, twisted ways. And some of that is very good and some of that is very, very bad. The very, very good is Absolute Wonder Woman is maybe the best Wonder Woman comic I've ever read in my life. Okay. It is so good. It looks incredible. It is taking the character in really cool, new, weird ways because instead of growing up in Themyscira among all the Amazons, she is the last Amazon. The rest have maybe all been killed by the gods, and she is left in hell to be raised by the goddess Circe. And that's the coolest shit I've ever heard of in my life. It's cool. It's a really cool comic. And like the Batman book this is a Bruce Wayne whose dad is a teacher, not a rich multi-billionaire. And his dad gets shot at a school field trip to the zoo. And so this is working class Batman instead of rich Batman. And he's still just as smart. He's still got all of Bruce Wayne's acumen when it comes to understanding things. But he's a working class guy. Like, this is not a rich man. And his mom's still alive. So this is a totally different version of Batman. The Superman book's pretty boring. It's like, what if Superman was older when he came to Earth and was sad? And it's like, okay, Jason Aaron, write a good comic. I know it's been a decade, but you used to write good comics. Maybe you could write a good comic again, Jason Aaron, but apparently he can't because Absolute Superman really sucks. But anyway, all this to say, one of 3 new books that came out this week was the first issue of Absolute Martian Manhunter. Do you know what character I've never cared about in my life, Peter? It's the Martian Manhunter. Who cares? Who cares about John Jones, the Martian Manhunter? Also, it's weird that he has our dad's name, but
that's true.
I don't need to worry about that.
That's true.
Absolute Martian Manhunter is a delight. If you are ever interested in picking up DC comics, honestly, the Absolute line all over is a good place to start. The Superman book's not bad, but it's not good. It's not as good as the Batman or the Wonder Woman book. The Absolute Martian Manhunter slaps. It is written by Dennis Camp, who is a very talented writer, and it has art by Javier Rodriguez, who is one of the best artists working today. And it is taking this character in a drastically different direction than we've ever seen before, and it looks like $1 million, and I highly recommend it. So that was one of 3 big comics that came out this week. The other 2 big comics that are worth mentioning, this is all just fun and games. It is the first issue of Hush, aka Hush 2, the sequel to Hush, one of the worst Batman comics, but one that is very, very popular. And it looks like ass, and people were coming in and buying multiple copies of it. And they were like I had 2 separate people tell me, I'm getting one of these so when it's worth something one day, I got a really good copy of it. And I just wanted to tell them, sir, this comic will never be worth more than $2. I assure you. This will be in our back issues for $2 in 6 months. It will never be worth more than $2. So I'm sorry that you're spending $8 on this glow-in-the-dark cover for this that is worth $2 and will never be worth more than that. It's a bad comic. Sorry you wasted your time. And then the other one worth mentioning, just as a joke, as an aside, a Harley Quinn one-shot came out this week that is Scratch and Sniff. And the Scratch and Sniffs smell like farts, Peter. They smell like farts because it is a comic about farts. It is a fart fetish comic starring Harley Quinn.
That's funny.
Would you like to wager a guess how many copies of the Harley Quinn fart fetish comic sold on Wednesday, the first day it was out at the comic store?
I have no idea because I don't know what they usually do.
Usually Harley Quinn sells 15, 20 books. She's not a big mover in our store. Okay. But this is kind of a big deal one. It's polybagged, so you can't smell the farts unless you buy it and open it up. So I have not personally smelled the farts. The boss man, after I left on Wednesday, apparently opened one up and said they mostly smell like gasoline, not actually like farts, which it's probably for the best. It's probably for the best. I texted him as the day was over, and I said, "So, how many copies of the Harley Quinn fart fetish book sold?" And the answer: goose egg. None of the fart fetishists are brave enough to walk into my comic shop and buy it with their own two hands. You know that they're buying it, and they're buying it from midtowncomics.com. Anyway, that's all I wanted to say. Comics. They come out every week on Wednesdays.
There you go. So the one thing I was going to mention, the tech purchase that I got, it was sometime last week, maybe. So I listened to a podcast called Next Portable Console. It's a couple people who do other podcasts, more tech related, that I listen to. But these guys kind of got deep down the handheld video game rabbit hole. And so I started listening to it in part because I was interested, and in part because, I have a Steam Deck and an ROG Ally X and that kind of stuff. And they were talking about the Ayn Odin portal. Now, there's all these weird companies that are just like shitting out these handheld things. So there's Ayn, and they've got the Odin portal, the Odin portal 2, the Odin 2, the Odin 2 Mini, the Odin 2 Pro. They were doing a Kickstarter for the Ayn Odin 2 portal. And the big difference is the portal has a little bit bigger, like a 7-inch screen. It's OLED. It has, the Snapdragon 8 Gen 2, whatever, fastest Snapdragon. It just runs Android. Basically, it's a 7-inch Android phone turned sideways into a fairly nice built handheld device. And they were doing it on Indiegogo, and I'd looked at it a couple times and I thought, no, I'm not that interested. And then they were doing their like handheld recommendations episode at the end of the year, and the Odin portal got recommended as like one of the best for retro gaming and all this stuff. And anyway, I caved. I went in, I ordered it on Indiegogo. It came like a week and a half. I spent so much time watching the video walkthroughs on Retro Game Core's video YouTube channel and reading the articles and all this stuff, trying to tell myself that I was going to turn this into the ultimate retro handheld. I was going to emulate Nintendo, NES, N64, GameCube. This is powerful enough. The Snapdragon in it is powerful enough that you can emulate Switch games if you want to, and actually run them at higher resolution than a Switch will run them. Anyway, so I was going to do that, and then I was going to do some PlayStation and PS2, and I think it'll do up to PS3, and then some PlayStation Portable and all this stuff. Eden, have you messed around much with modern video game emulation?
I have, and that is why I made a face when you said N64, because you know what is a son of a bitch to emulate? The Nintendo 64. It doesn't matter how powerful your device is, you fucked if you want to do anything that isn't Mario 64. That machine is like an enigmatic box designed by a wizard that no one can figure out how to make emulate correctly. Now, a PSP, anything can emulate a PSP, but that N64, I don't know, man. Something's up with that weird device. I don't know what magic they did in it.
Well, here's what I'll tell you. And you can tell me all the reasons why I'm wrong if you would like. I don't, that's fine. After spending a lot of time going through and going into the Play Store and downloading DuckStation and PS or PPSSPP or whatever, and all of these, and then downloading some front ends. And then it got to the point where, okay, now I need to side load some apps, and it's okay. I'm looking at so for PlayStation 2 emulation, you've got Aether SX2, but that's no longer being updated. So now you got to get Nether SX2, but that patches Aether SX2. And there's two versions of this, and some games run better in one version and some games run better in the other version, but you can't have both of them installed at the same time. And then I'm like, okay, ROMs, they're easy to find. Look, don't at me. Yes, I know, blah, blah, blah. Dump your own ROMs.
You own all of those discs. Don't worry about it. You own every one of those discs that you wanted to download a ROM for. Don't worry about it, Mr. Policeman.
Anyway, then it came time. Now I'm trying to find BIOS files that I have to load in. And you know what? I got to a point where I just said, fuck this.
Yep.
And I'm not going to do it. And I'm not going to worry about it. And you know what? You can put the Epic Game Store on there, sideload it. And you know what the Epic Game Store is doing right now? Every week they're giving away 2 like nice Android games that you can put on there. And so I'll put that on, and maybe I'll put Diablo Immortal. Oh, and then you know what I did? I got Moonlight and Sunshine set up so I can stream from my home PC, my entire Steam library. And then because I'm a sucker and I said to myself, it's only $99 for 6 months, I subscribed to GeForce Now Ultimate. So then I linked my Steam account and Xbox and all of this stuff. So now I can stream all this stuff on this nice little, well-built, very nice looking, beautiful screen handheld. And I thought to myself, retro gaming emulation is just not for me. Now, another aside to this that I'm going to fill in. And again, don't at me. I don't care. I was scrolling through Instagram at one point and I saw an ad for hugepacks.co.uk or something like that. And for like $60, it was a 400 gigabyte RAR file that I downloaded, and it unzips to its own folder with all of this stuff, and it's got its own front end, and you just launch that, and then you just start going through, and you've got all these old systems, and it's got the BIOS already, and it's got a whole shit ton of ROMs in there, and you can easily drop more ROMs in if you want. And you know what? I went in and I played that, and I did a few old retro games, and I thought to myself, these aren't that good. And so the realization I think I've come to is the people who were really, really big fans of retro gaming played all of these games and had these systems growing up, and that's why they mean something. But for people like me and you, who we had that Atari 5200 that we've talked about, and that was it. And I could play a Nintendo occasionally at a friend's house, and then I could play a Super Nintendo occasionally at a friend's house, and then I got old enough that the GameCube and the N64 and all that stuff, like I was not in a place where I could. I didn't have a Game Boy. I had no PSP. I don't have any love for these old games. And so going back and playing some of these old games that I have zero attachment to and no nostalgia makes me go, they're not that good. And I'm just going to be happier playing modern games. And so there we go.
The trick is, most of the games that are good retro games, you can just go buy on your PC now.
Yes.
Because they've been either updated or ported or things like that. Like, I think that most of those old games, the only ones that are really interesting to me are RPGs, and most of those RPGs I can just go buy. Like, if I want to play Final Fantasy VI, I can just go buy Final Fantasy VI, the special pixel edition. Or like Live Alive is one of the greatest games that has ever been made. That was an SNES game that was never brought to America. So if you wanted to play the original SNES version, you have to find a weird fan translation of it. But guess what? 2 years ago, they just put out an HD 2D version of it. And so now anyone can play one of the finest RPGs ever made because it was a good one, so they updated it. And it's out, and you could go buy it on Steam for $30 right now. Are there exceptions? Yes. Do I constantly, at least once a week, think to myself, it's time for me to figure out emulation and sideloading fan translation so that I can play Racing Lagoon? Because that is a PS1 era RPG that is about being a Tokyo drifter. And that is the most appealing thing in the world to me. An RPG about drifting in Tokyo called Racing Lagoon. But I'd have to download the emulator, make sure the emulator's running, find the ROM, figure out how to sideload the fan translation into it. I don't know what I'm doing. I've never done this before. So I think about it, and then I think, or I can just play many of the games that I can just hit start on right now, and I do that instead.
You know, that was my realization too. As I was going down this rabbit hole, and I'm like, I had the written guide for the Odin 2 portal and the 1.5 hour YouTube video open in tabs in Chrome on my desktop PC for a week. And I would come back and I'd watch a little bit and then I'd go, not right now. And then I would pause it. And then I started looking at it and I'm thinking to myself, I have so many games in my Steam backlog that I have never played?
What
Why
am
am
I
I worrying
doing?
about 20-plus-year-old games? And so it's not for me. For those who love it, it's great. Hey, I get the impression there has never been a better time to be into retro game emulation. There are
Absolutely.
so many devices out there. I mean, hell, you can go and spend $80 on Amazon and get something that looks kind of like an old Game Boy, but has a nicer screen that's like at least 720, if not 1080p. And it's
Mm-hmm.
probably going to come with like 18 to 20,000 games already loaded on an SD card. And you can just buy that on Amazon. And I even toyed around with that idea. And then again, I thought to myself, I have so many games as it is. I just need to play the games and so
True
that
words
was
never
my
spoken.
that was my little tech dalliance, and I've decided that retro game emulation not really for me, and that's okay. And so now I'm just going to find more modern games that I can play on this Odin portal because it's a nice little device that's much smaller than a Steam Deck.
A lot
But
lighter, I'd
yeah,
imagine, in your
a lot
hands then.
lighter. Yeah. So that was my adventure, but it was a big digression. I appreciate you letting me take us down that path,
Oh, by
but
all means.
I'm going to turn it back over to you for a topic
All
for the
right.
week.
So our topic for the week, as many of our listeners likely know, I'm pretty sure I talked about it because it was coming out as we were recording the podcast. I really liked the Star Wars show Andor. I think it's really fine. I think it's a fine Star Wars story. Maybe. See, this is the problem, though. And then we'll talk about why this is a problem as we get into how you felt about it. Because, listeners, I made Peter watch the first 3 episodes of Andor because you had never seen Andor before.
I hadn't. And I specifically remember you telling me at the time there were some things going on where I was just like, oh, this doesn't feel like now is the time for me to watch this show. And you supported that decision.
I
And
do
so
remember
I
that.
never did watch it. And this was a good reason for me to jump in.
So the thing is I say this knowing that this is maybe hyperbolic, but also it's maybe true in my heart. I think it's the finest piece of Star Wars fiction we've had so far.
Okay.
But I worry, and so this is why I'm very curious to see how you found this. Because I worry that you've had 2 years of people saying, this is the greatest thing Star Wars has ever done. So I wonder if after you watched those first 3 episodes, you were like, really? This? So anyway, Peter, we watched the first 3 episodes of Andor. You'd never watched it before. You haven't seen any. Did you stop at 3 or have you continued watching past that?
I stopped at 3 just because I made it to number 3 this afternoon. So I haven't had time to go past.
All right. So how did you find the first 3 episodes of Andor? Was it overhyped?
I'm going to say I don't know.
Okay,
I don't know yet. So the first episode, I felt like it was kind of a little aimless. I was very glad you had us watch 3 because the first episode, not into it, not bad, just was like, eh. Second episode, a little more into it. By the end of the 3rd episode, I'm like, all right, you got your hooks in me. I will continue watching this.
Sure.
And so I don't feel like I've watched enough to be able to say whether or not it was overhyped, but I will say this, and I know I've brought this up before, but between the prequels and the sequels, my love for Star Wars, which was deep and abiding, and
both of us.
I mean,
we spent our decades in the EU mines, my brother.
Oh yeah,
we read so many dog shit novels and slopped them up because we were like, it's more Star Wars. Give me Crystal Star. Give me the dark saber.
Yeah, totally. And that's why this is interesting to me, because so many of those were so bad, but it was just more Star Wars, that now that we got more official Star Wars, I fucking hate the prequels and the sequels so damn much that I kind of hate Star Wars now.
That's fair.
I watched the first season of The Mandalorian because my boys were watching it. And when it was said and done, I thought that was pretty good. but I have had zero desire to watch anything else Star Wars related since I finished that. No desire to go back and watch The Mandalorian again. I did see the movie Solo and thought it was fine. It was whatever. I thought Rogue One was pretty good, but nothing has been able to get me over that inertial slump that I am, where when I think of Star Wars, all I can think of, and it's a good thing we just put an explicit tag on this podcast, because all I can think of is fuck Star Wars, fuck Disney, and fuck George Lucas.
That's fair. So in that context, in that milieu, I made you watch 3 episodes of this TV show that have had 2 years of people saying, wow, this is maybe too much. And you thought they were great.
I thought they were great. I like Cassian Andor. It looked great.
Hell yeah. Because it's shot on a goddamn set. It is shot on goddamn sets instead of the fucking volume like every other Star Wars show is. So those all look like they're Unreal Engine games because they're literally shot with big screens behind them and Unreal Engine environments. And Tony Gilroy was like, no, I'm going to a set. I'm making these people walk down actual streets that are built in real world.
Yes, it looks incredible. It looks great. Again, there's a lot of, and I won't spoil it, I'll let you do kind of a summary if you want.
Sure.
We get these jumps back and forth between Cassian's past and the future or the present, and it's a little unclear what's happening. So it feels disconnected. But by the end of that 3rd episode, it brings those 2 things together in a way that, again, it got its hooks in me and it made me go, okay, yeah, I want to see where it goes from here. I like this character. I know eventually what happens to him, but I'm really interested to figure out between here, what takes him to Rogue One and what's that setup. And so I enjoyed it. I would say I enjoyed these 3 episodes probably more than I have enjoyed anything Star Wars related since I was a kid and saw Return of the Jedi.
The thing is,
and it's way better than Return of the Jedi, by the way.
It is. But Return of the Jedi is not good.
I'm just talking about enjoyment.
The thing that I think it does well, before I get into a breakdown of it, is it takes the ideas of Star Wars deathly seriously and makes those things matter in a way that I feel like especially the other live action shows don't. They're always a little winking and a little like, hey, it's Star Wars. You like Star Wars, don't you? Remember how Boba Fett looks so cool? What if we had double cool plus Boba Fett in all silver? And he's got a baby Yoda. And it's like, okay, he's a silver Boba Fett with a baby Yoda. Okay. You made you brought IG-88 in, but you called him IG-11, and now he's wearing the baby on his chest. Woohoo! I think The Mandalorian sucks, but that's neither here nor there. What makes this show interesting is they take it deathly serious. This is a show that is not winking at you. This is not a show that is trying to be like, hey, this is Star Wars. May the Force be with you. You didn't hear, in 3 episodes, you never heard, I have a bad feeling about this, not one time.
Nope.
Which is said in every other Star Wars thing 17,000 times, because it's taking itself seriously and is trying to tell, I think, a mature, and I don't mean that in the like, ooh, mature. I mean that in like, it's taking itself seriously and trying to tell a real story about real interesting people and saying, how do we frame this as a story about these interesting people? And I think that a lot of that comes down to the direction, like you said. I think it's really well shot. I think it's well lit. I think you can see everything that's happening, which so rarely happens in modern television. I think the sets look incredible. I think that the writing is really tight. I think it's really well done. And I think the performances are almost all great. Like, I think this is a really talented cast of actors doing really, really good work. And especially Diego Luna just fucking kills it. The guy is such a good actor and has been for decades. And sometimes we forget it because he doesn't make that much stuff. And every time I see him, I'm like, man, you know who was good? Diego Luna. He needs to be in more stuff. But I'm going to do a quick recap of these 3 episodes. They are all 3 of them. And you should watch them in all one fell swoop, dear listeners. Yeah. If you are interested in this show, you need to know the structure of this show. And this is good information for you to have too, Peter. Episodes 1 through 3 written and directed by the same people. That is one arc. Episodes 4, 5, 6, written and directed by the same people. That is one arc. 7 is kind of a standalone to set up the stakes for the last half of the season. 8, 9, 10 is a standalone arc of 3 episodes. And then 11 and 12 is like a big finale. Okay. So know that going in is like when you start episode 4, 5, 6, that is one story. You're going to want to watch all those in one big chunk. And I got to say, as soon as this one finished, I started up episode 4 and I was like, oh no, I got to have to watch this in one chunk because this is one big story. And they're doing that with the next season too. And the next season is going to be a series of 4 3-episode arcs, one each taking place a year in the future as it approaches closer and closer to Rogue One. Because this show takes place 5 years before the Battle of Yavin. So before episode 4, A New Hope. And it starts with stuff you feel is hinted to in Star Wars, but you've never seen on screen before. Cassian Andor walks into a host club and starts asking about a girl who's working in that host club because he's looking for his little sister. And you're like, okay, what's going on here? And it just feels different than you've expected Star Wars to feel before. The music is not John Williams-esque at all in any of these. It has a very, very different feel to it. When he walks into this host club, it sounds like techno, not jizz. And like, don't get it twisted. Figure and Dan and the Modal Nodes will be in my heart forever. The Cantina song, I love jizz. Don't get it twisted. I'm here for it. But this is something different, and it's got a different vibe because of it. So he goes and he's looking for his sister. And while he is in this club, these 2 security guards are kind of being assholes to him because the girls in the club want to talk to him and they don't want to talk to them. And so as he's leaving, they follow him. They try to shake him down, essentially. And he tries to get out of that and accidentally kills them. Kills one of them accidentally. The other one is like, oh my God, this wasn't meant to happen. This wasn't meant to happen. So he shoots him in the face because he knows there's no coming back from this. He's killed a cop. He's got to run. And so he runs from what he's done, goes back to his home planet of Ferrix, the planet he's been living on. And there is where you find out that he is clearly a hustler, a mover who is at the last end of his rope. Everyone is fed up with him. He owes literally everybody money. And he is clearly at the ragged edge. And now he has just killed these 2 cops and needs to figure out how to get the heck out of the system. So he hooks up with his contact, Bix Colleen, who clearly has a black market smuggler contact. She calls that person in because he has a navigation unit that is unopened, which he knows is going to be worth a large sum of credits, enough to get him off planet and to be able to lay low for months, maybe a year or 2. He is going around. Things are clearly bad. He kind of has a fraught relationship with his mother, Marva, who we end up finding out how he came to live with Marva later on. He has maybe one of the greatest droids in the history of Star Wars here in B2 Emo. B2, clearly awesome. The saddest old dog of a droid I've ever seen in all of Star Wars. I love B2 Emo so much. He's such a good droid. But he clearly has like a strained relationship with his family. And we find out why that is because when he was a kid, he grew up on a planet called Kenari. And this was a planet where clearly there had been some sort of industrial mining accident that, as far as we can infer as viewers, killed all the adults because only kids are there in like a Peter Pan-esque situation where there's no real adults. It's only like teens and kids living in this kind of like tribal situation. They see a starship crashing on their planet. So they put together like a little band to go explore what had happened. Cassian goes along. Clearly for the first time, he's allowed to go along with. And as they're out there, the leader of this tribe gets killed by these, well, they're separatists, but we don't need to talk about the politics of Star Wars. That doesn't matter right now. But killed by one of these separatist dudes who crashes on this planet. And so the kids kill these other, people who had survived this train or this crash, Cassian sneaks onto the ship and is just like smashing stuff up because he's so like filled with rage and feels impotent about it. And that is when these scrappers come, who are these, these two people who are there with their droid. And they realize that the authorities are coming. If they find him here, they're going to kill him. And so they abduct him and they take him away. And they're like, this is and Marva, who is his mother later on, basically her and her husband Clem kidnap this child and adopt him. And he becomes their kid, but like he's taken from everything he knows, everyone he knows. And that is where like the flashback ends with him awakening on this ship and being taken into the sky with Marva looking back at him. In the present day, people find out that it is a Canary male because the people overheard him at that host club asking about a Canary woman. So they figure out he's a Canary male. And he loose lips sink ships, Cassian. He told people that he was originally from Canary and was not from Fex, which is what his official paperwork says. And Bix's jealous boyfriend, Tim, with 2 M's, rats him out. The corpos come in force because they've got to catch their man. And it goes real bad for them. And the black market contact shows up at the same time. He meets up with the black market contact, and the black market contact is like, I'm not here for the Starpath unit. I'm here for you. Because if you were able to steal this, I need you because you have talent. And that is worth far more to me than this box. And so they work together. They kill a lot of cops, and they eventually escape on this black market dude's ship as he's like, don't you want to do something that matters? Don't you want to fight these guys for real? And that is where the present ends, in kind of a mirroring of what had happened in the flashback where he awakens being taken into space. Now he's leaving his new home, his whole family, and going into space with this guy who he doesn't know who this guy is, but this guy said, I can save you, and don't you want to make these guys hurt? And Cassian does want to make these guys hurt. He's got a lot of hurt in him, and he wants to bring the hurt to the Empire. And that is where episode 3 ends. So what sort of stuff stuck out to you here, Peter? What did you find interesting about this, or things you want to mention about this show?
So I definitely, I think there's some commentary on the modern state of police, at least in America.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, you've got this young inspector, whatever, from the Corpo security group. And when he goes and tells the head inspector, look, these 2 people are dead, blah, blah, blah. The head inspector, who's on his way to some meeting or something, just basically stands up and says, it was an accident, right? Your report is going to be this is an accident because we're not getting into this. And then he leaves. And so you've got this young guy who's just like, oh, they killed a cop, he must pay. Ah! And just like goes on a rampage, and he's being this just super uptight prick. And I mean, it's one dude, and they get a group of 14 people to go hunt him down once they've tracked him down. And it was a lot of scenes of the Corpo security being blustery, a little incompetent because they're so trigger happy. They're just so, I mean, Tim with the 2 M's gets shot just because they've caught Bix, and they're kind of holding on to her because she was running. And so that's all they have to go on. She's running. So she must be in trouble.
Suspicious behavior.
So they grab her, and they've actually got one of her arms, like, I don't know, held somehow, handcuffed to a wall. Side of her face is bloody. Tim comes running down to see her, and she's like, no, go away, because she knows what these bastards are going to do. And what do? They kill him. Yep. And just the impotent rage of the junior inspector guy as, this speeder that they think they're going in, that they're just blasting to hell, blows up and explodes and takes out some of the cops with him. And then the ones that went to go get him at the meetup place, they've been taken out. And, it was really interesting to go, oh, I mean, this is not subtle.
Oh,
and
no.
it's kind of uncomfortably spot on, I think.
Yeah.
And so that
Yeah.
was one of the big things that jumped out at me. Is it's like, oh, Tony Gilroy, I see what you're doing. And yeah, you hit that nail on the fucking head.
Yep. I think, what were your vibes about the planet Ferrix? Ferrix is the planet that Cassian lives on, that his family's on, all these folks, Bix, Brasso. We haven't even talked about Brasso, his very, very large friend, who is a fucking king.
Yeah, so it feels like it's a junkyard. You know, Brasso, basically, he and this whole group of guys, they're going out there and they're just basically stripping things for parts. There's one scene where there's some big, massive thing where they just like rip the wall off and it just goes crashing down to the ground so they can get in and they can pick that thing clean.
Yeah. And there's so many, like, I think Ferrix is really well realized as a setting just in these 3 episodes. I think the strongest of any of the 3 planets that we kind of see, because we see Preox Morlana, where in that first scene where he goes to the club, we see Kanari in the flashbacks, but like Ferrix is really well situated because we meet a lot of people, we get the lay of the land, and there are just a lot of really interesting little touches. Like there is a dude who gets up and hits this big old bell with a hammer and does these like kind of funky tones by hitting it in different spots to signal the start of the workday, to signal the end of the workday. There's the huge wall with all the gloves of all the workers where they just leave their gloves there at night. And then when they go off to work in the morning, they grab their gloves off the wall, which is just like this really striking image of like this industrial society that they have. And when the cops show up,
I was just going to say, I love that where they all just instinctively know the cops are here. Start banging on metal. Everything closes down. Everybody scatters. And one person is hitting something and somebody runs to something else. There's all these little metal things, knickknacks, junk, whatever, hanging outside on the wall where people can go over and hit these. And everybody knows what that means. Everybody knows what that means.
Yep. Like this is like a working class place that know that what they have is each other. And they can't trust the authorities and they can't trust the government, but what they can trust is each other. And that is clearly how, like, this is almost like an autonomous society that is built here where like they're making it work. Like people do different things. We've got Bix doing, like, she runs a shop with Tim, but also has her black market business. We meet a couple other people who clearly are like in shipping because they're the ones who Cassian goes to talk to about like, can you get me off the planet? And so like there are clearly other industries besides just the scrapping, but like it's clearly built around scrapping. And like these people trust each other and only each other. They do not trust people who are not part of the society. And I just think that it's just really interestingly realized. One of the most, and it just looks incredible. Like you said, there's this one scene where I think if you're not paying attention, you don't notice this, but if you notice it, it's one of those things that makes me just feel like I'm completely sickos coded for Star Wars when it looks like this. And it is when Luthen, the black market dude, lands in the shuttle he's coming in on, and a pair of stairs that is a droid rolls up to the shuttle. That whole droid's life is being stairs and rolling up, letting people walk on it, and then rolling back away, and then rolling up to the next transport. And I'm like, oh my God, Star Wars. When they do it right, it hits so well.
Yeah.
The droid is stairs. My God. It's so cool. What are some other things that you thought were interesting about this?
I think that the relationship between Marva and Cassian, it seems strained and you don't really, I don't know. It doesn't feel realized until you get that flashback scene where she rescues / kidnaps him. And then just the way she looks back at him when he wakes up on that ship and they're taking off. I was so impressed with how much that conveyed. And now then you jump to the present in the story And so many of his interactions with her that you have already seen now make more sense.
Uh-huh.
And I thought that was really impressive. The shorthand with which they're able to establish this relationship and tell you so much about it without telling you that much about it.
Yeah. And again, I think it's just masterfully acted. I think the actor who plays Marva is so good in the scenes that she's in. I'm trying to think of her name. I can't think of it right now. Doesn't matter. I think she's very, very good though. And I think that their interplay works really well. And I think it's really, we learn a lot in that third episode when they show up and they find young Casa, which is his name before it goes with them. We learn a lot because she's with somebody else. She's with this guy named Clem. And then we don't see him in the future. And there's one throwaway line that Luthen, the black market dude, says, and you find out a little bit more about why Cassian might hate the people that he hates. What happened to his dad, Peter?
I don't remember.
His dad was hung in the town square.
Oh, yes, that's right.
His dad got fucking murdered by the state in the town square. So tell me this is not a guy who is radicalized and ready to pick up a gun if he needs to. Like, he is not there yet. He is like on the point of radicalization, but because of the difficulties he's had, because of the life that he's led, he's not there yet. But like, this is a guy who is, and like, this is what Star Wars has always been. We watch episode 4 and we realize, oh, this is the Vietnamese fighting against America. That's what Star Wars is. This is a peasant farmer on the verge of radicalization against the U.S. empire in Vietnam in 1968. That's who Cassian Andor is. Because they killed his fucking dad and they hung his body in the square for days. And so like, that's why he's not around. And like, even if he does have this strained relationship with Marva, that's still his mom, because what's one of the only things he says to people as he's leaving? Here is money. Please take care of my mom. I will give you money. Make sure she is taken care of. Make sure she turns her heat on, because she's not turning the heat on in the house. She's sitting in the cold. So make sure she has money. Make sure she's eating. Make sure she turns the heat on. And like, so even though there is that strain there, he loves her. And like, you feel that, even though it is a difficult relationship, but he doesn't have that because his dad's dead. He doesn't have that with his dad. And so it really reframes a lot of the choices that he makes and the way that he acts in the face of authority. Because he knows that these are the guys who killed his dad. Even if it's not these specific dudes, it's dudes like this. Exactly. And again, the whole town knows it. Because what happens to the dude who goes up in the little puddle jumper ship? When they land, Brasso is like, something that is bad is happening here. And so he attaches a piece of something to their little puddle jumper ship.
Big, massive.
He tethers it to like a huge engine or something like that. And so then when it takes off, it can't fly straight and slams into the side of a derelict ship. And like, again, just adding to the body count, like I think 7 or 8 dudes get got out of that team of 14. It's gnarly. It's really gnarly. When it goes loud, this show gets really, really loud and is shot really well. And the action scenes are really competent. And, you know, it just has a really crunchy feel to it that I feel like a lot of the more recent stuff feels just loosey-goosey. And I think part of that is the sets, and I think part of that is the direction. I think it's really well directed. You know, these first 3 episodes were all directed by Toby Haynes, who has done a lot of TV work. Like, he comes from TV largely. He did a lot of Black Mirror, things like that. And he does really good work, I think, here. I think it's really, really competently shot. All right. Any other things you want to mention about what you thought about these first 3 episodes before I have one last little game for us to play before we sign off?
I don't think so. I just, like I say, I really enjoyed it. I have that hesitancy anytime I approach anything Star Wars related. Again, thanks to the prequels and the sequel. And so I was a little reticent going in. But having watched those first 3, again, I'm on board. I'm looking forward to watching the rest of it.
I will say, I don't want to get too much hype for you, but I think the first 3 episodes are the weakest arc of the first season.
Okay.
So if you liked this, I think it's only up from here even. Like, nice. I think that the climax of episode 6 was when I was like, oh no, this is the best Star Wars has ever been. I wasn't even there in those first 3 episodes. So I'm very curious to see, as you continue watching, how you feel about it. I'm really excited to keep rewatching it ahead of the debut of season 2. I know for season 2, they're doing it in the 3 episode chunks. So like on April 22nd, not 1, not 2, but 3 episodes are dropping. Okay. And then every week after that, they're doing 3 episodes. And so it is going to burn hot and burn fast, I'm afraid, but I'm really excited to see where it goes. Nice. Because I think this first season's very, very good. So my activity for you is this. You've seen these first 3 episodes. What do you think is going to happen to Cassian Andor and Cyril Karn, the sniveling little son of a bitch security boy? What do you think is going to happen with these two as the season moves on?
God, I don't know, because on the one hand, I want there to be a confrontation, and on the other hand, that sniveling little shit is just like, I wanted him to die in this episode so I didn't have to look at him anymore. So I don't know.
That's fair.
I don't know.
I'm very curious to see how you find what happens to that sniveling little son of a bitch.
Okay.
I think definitely. Kyle Soller is so good in that role because he's so gross. I hate him so much. Yes. I hate him so much. But God, he's good at being terrible. He's really good at being terrible.
I agree.
That scene where his boss says to him, "What have you done to your uniform?" And he's like, "Piping, light tailoring," and like he looks so cut and like put together while everyone else's uniforms are just like schlubby work uniforms. And it's just like, oh, this guy wants to be a fascist. This isn't a guy who stumbled into fascism. This is a kid who was like, yes, sir, I want to be a fascist, sir.
But then he has to give that motivational speech on the little
on
the way down.
It's so bad.
He chokes so hard, so bad.
And his sniveling little sidekick dude is the worst. Oh my God. He's so terrible, where he's like, dereliction in the face of duty. And you're just like, you are the worst little troll of a human. I hate you so much.
Well, again, he's that perfect example of, now look, I'm going to say something. I don't want this to be offensive. I hope it isn't, but it's the only way I could think about it as I was watching this. That entire group, the Corpo security team that goes down, or especially those 2 guys, all I could think is like, this is real small dick energy here.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
Just
anyway,
like
I'm
fully embodied.
Yes, it's bad. And they're taking it out on people. That's why they become people like this. It's because they want to hurt people. That's why you become this kind of cop. That's why you become a cop. It's because you want to enforce, you want to uphold capitalism. You want to enforce the rules of the state, and you want to beat the shit out of people. And that is true here. And that is true in Star Wars.
Oh, it hurts. It hurts.
It does. Anyway, that's our episode for today, folks. Thank you all for listening. This one went a little long, but I think it was worth it. I think we had some really fun discussions. We'll be back in 2 weeks with another episode. Feel free to give us a rating or shoot us an email to feedback@themiddleofculture.com. And we'll talk to y'all in a couple of weeks.
Bye.